Hello friends, I am starting a new series on Git and this is the first tutorial. So in this tutorial, I'm going to explain what is version control and version control system. So what is version control? So version control manages changes to a file or set of files as versions. And I have an example where I will show the set of files that I will be modifying in different days and how with the version control we can see changes that are done in the day one and that are done in the day two. And so what are the difference between day one and day two file changes? So if you understand that example, then that is going to be the first step in the Git. And next thing is what is version control system? Version control, we know that version control tells how to manage the source code as versions, but this process is implemented by the version control system. So the most well-known version control system is Git. So let's jump to the example. So you can just simply think version control system as a file system, but with a lot of additional features. And I'll explain you the difference between a file system and version control system, VCS. So for example, I am working on a project and then I have created three files, a.java, b.java, c.java. So think that I don't have any version control system on my computer. So I'm just saving in a file system. So on the day one, I have created I have created these three files and saving these three files. But in the file system, you will only get metadata such as who is the author, what is the file size, and what is the file type. But if you are using a version control system and save in the VCS, then so it also saves these three files and with the same metadata. But you don't see much difference in day one. And now in day two, so I have modified a.java and b.java. So in a.java, I added a few more methods, and in b.java also added few more methods, and also updated some existing methods. And now if we see after save with respect to the file system and VCS, in the file system, it just overwrites the two files that you have updated and also updates the metadata update time. And but now you see the real difference between file system and VCS. If you look at VCS, it also overwrites the two files, but it also maintains the changes that are made on these files. And now, okay, on the day three, you came and you want to see what are the changes from day one to day two. You can, with the VCS, provide some commands. Using those commands, you can see what changes are done in a.java and what changes are done in b.java. Who did the changes? So this functionality is not offered by the file system. And so now come to a day three. So a member of your team added a few more changes to a.java, b.java, and another member added few more changes to b.java and c.java. So if you look at file system, it just saves the changes. But if you look at b.java, the last changed is by team member 2. But another team member also made the changes before to the team member 2. But so whenever you look at the metadata, you will only get to know that team member 2 made the changes. But before team member 2 had made the changes, team member 1 also made the changes. That information is lost. But if you are using the VCS, so it saves all the changes to a.java, b.java, but it also maintains the changes, series of changes that are done by teammate 1 and teammate 2. You can exactly see the changes that are done by the teammate 1 and teammate 2 on the B.Java. So that is the one more advantage. You can see the past changes and you can also see the changes that are done by teammate 1 and as well as teammate 2. So these are the advantages you get with the VCS. I'll just show the advantages again. So it allows you to compare the changes to files over time. You can look day 1, day 2 and day 3 changes. And also one more advantage is it will provide the ability to revert files to previous state. So I had made some changes on day 3. Those changes are incorrect. So I can just revert to day 2. That cannot be done by the file system. And you can also revert entire project to previous state. So for example, on day 3, some 5 developers had made changes to your project, but you want to revert to day 2. That also you can do with the VCS. And also you can see who and when modified the files that are causing problems in system. So for example, on day 3, I made some changes and this is causing some issues in the system. Then I can just come and see who made the changes. And also I can revert. So these all advantages are provided by the VCS. The same advantages cannot be provided by file system. And so now you know what is the VCS and what are the advantages it provides. Now there are different types of VCS and currently the market is using distributed version control systems. So there are others that were existed earlier. So initially the local version control systems people were using, and later centralized version control systems came, and now currently all the companies are using distributed version control systems. So I'll just show you the differences between these three. And local version control system, so it just maintains a simple version database on the local computer, so that keeps all the changes to files in versions. So as the name tells, it's a local, so you cannot use this for your distributed development process where multiple people work on the same project. This is only for the developer in his local computer. So this is best suitable for IDEs such as IntelliJ and Eclipse. So these IDEs provide a feature to look at the history of changes made to a file. So you can just click and see the local history. So in that case, it is very useful, but not suitable for distributed development process. If you have multiple team members, then local VCS is not suitable. And next thing is centralized version control system. So now you know already local VCS does not help when you have a team. So here this problem is fixed by centralized version control system. So here centralized version control system contains one central server to maintain files in different versions. So for many years, many years, this has been the standard for version control. So a centralized version control system looks like this. You have a VCS server and your project files will be there, and each file will have different versions, and there will be different team members. Each team member is a client which connects to the centralized VCS, and they can make changes and then they can save. Those changes will come as new versions. The advantages: a team can collaborate and work together on the same project, and everyone can save their changes to a central server, and no need to worry if their local computer is corrupted or is not working. And one more thing is administrator will have fine grained control. So he can decide who can do what, and it makes life easier for them as he has to take only one centralized server as opposed to local database, local VCS. And disadvantages, the centralized server now represents as single point of failure, which means if server dies, then sorry, if the server goes down for hours, then team cannot collaborate and cannot save the changes to server. So if server crashes or server loses the data, so you risk losing everything since the entire project is on the single server. So to address this problem, the distributed version control system came into play. So the distributed version control system, each developer, when it checks out the project, it checks out the complete code base, including its full version history. All these versions will be checked out to his local computer. It's nothing but the exact replica of the repository. Each checkout effectively works as a remote backup. So it's like the developer is taking a backup. It works as a remote backup, thereby avoiding the centralized server as a single point of failure. And Git is the most popular distributed version control system. And also, for example, if the server dies, since the repository is already copied completely, including the version history to the client, to the developer, if you can just copy the same repository back to the server to restore. And see, one more thing is with the DVCS, the repositories can be synchronized by transferring patches. Means only the changes that you have done to A.java, B.java, C.java, then only those changes will be transferred to the server, not like the uh, centralized VCS. And DVCS looks like below. So you have a server computer, you have a computer 1, and you have a computer 2. And so server computer also has a version database, and client 1 also will have a version database, and client 2 also will have a version database. Now, if you look at Git, so Git will, you need to install Git in your local. So, and then, so that's what the version database in local is, nothing but you have installed the Git in your local. And advantages, allows the users to work offline without connecting to the server, and there is no need to connect to a central server for common operations such as commits, version history, and reverting changes. So you don't have to connect to the server, for example, for reverting changes, since you have all the full version history. And for commits, and then you want to see the previous changes, those simple operations, you don't have to connect to the server, as you have the version database maintained in your local. And allows the user to create their own branches locally and without publishing until the work is done. You can just create your branch and you can work on it, and you don't have to publish. And right, it removes the single point of failure, as each checkout is mirror of the server and can be used to restore in case of server failures. And disadvantages, so central version control system has a locking mechanism, but that is not there in the DVCS. And initial checkouts takes time and takes additional memory, as the entire repository is mirrored into the local computer. So this is the very slight disadvantage. And conclusion, see, you don't see a software product development without a VCS. And VCS are there from the very beginning, and they are evolving and evolved a lot and added many features to ease the software development. That's it for the tutorial.